Hi all, welcome back to the Spruce Cape Modeling. Today I will be painting some 1/100th Jagdpanthers for Flames of War. Alright, we will be starting off with a Dunkelgelb base coat over a black primer. You can use whatever Dunkelgelb you want for this. My go-to mixture is a mix of green and orange ochre. This is mixed myself from Vallejo paints and then sprayed overwards. And I also kind of like it because it does give me the variation that a lot of the tanks did have. Then we're going to be putting on the green camo. This is done with Camouflage Dark Green from the Vallejo Model Air range. I'll be doing kind of like an amorphous blob scheme. That's the general goal here. You should end up with something that looks a little bit like this. You can see all around here. But make sure to leave room for the brown. This is Camouflage Medium Brown from the same range. And I will also be doing kind of the blob thing with this. I kind of applied this the same way that I applied the green, and yeah, eventually you should end up with something like this. I went for pretty high coverage on this model. I think that at the small scale, some of the larger blobs are okay, and pretty high coverage definitely gives it a nicer look. Next up, we'll be painting the tracks. I paint these with the Panzer Aces Dark Rust. This is a great base coat for all metal tracks I've found. Yeah, this goes into all the little cracks and crevices of the tracks. And yeah, make sure that these are nice and uniform. But try not to get any overspill on the wheels, as always. Next up is a pin wash. This is mixed from chocolate brown and black. This should be very dark with a brownish tint. This is a pretty heavy pin wash that I'm applying to all the details and all the panel lines. Really get the most out of the model. I'm applying it to all the hatches. Here you can see I'm doing it on the weld lines. If you do this right, the capillary action works really great on these weld lines, and you can get a nice crisp look. I'm also just going to apply it to the engine deck, all the panel lines and grills back there. Just give it, a little bit more of an interesting look. Next up is the detail painting. This is just chocolate brown on all of the wooden parts, so mostly tool handles and the jack block on the other side. Yeah, this is just important. It's not that hard, but just make sure there's no overspill. Next up is the detail painting with black, hull machine gun, the jack, track tightener, and of course, just various pieces of equipment strapped onto the side of the tank. Again, this is just a pretty simple step. Just make sure that there's minimal overspill. Alright, there you are. This is all of the base coating done. It's time to get on to weathering. I will be starting with a dark sand sponge chipping of all raised details. Raised details, panel lines, and, sharp edges. Go pretty heavy on this, but it doesn't have to be insane. You're going to be going back over this with dark chipping, and you do want to make sure that this will be visible under the dark chipping because it gives a really nice kind of highlighted, in some cases more dusty, and in other cases more scratched look, depending on how you do it. So if you, this is what I ended up with. I went a little heavier on my next one in the platoon, but yeah, overall, doesn't need to be super heavy, but it will give it a lot of interesting, visual effects. Next up, I paint Vallejo Light Rust Wash on all of the tracks, spare and in use. I paint this on unthinned pretty heavily. It'll blend really, really well with the dark rust, as of course they are both rusty colors. I let it collect in the gaps between the tracks, around guide horns, stuff like that. Then we are on to dark chipping. This is done with dark rust again. This is much lighter than the previous step, and this is to add a little bit of variation to the chips. This is to represent exposed metal, so I don't want this tank to look like it's been in the field for too long, so I'm not going super heavy on it. Again, it's all up to taste and what you want your tank to really look like when it's done. You end up with something like that, and the last step is to just slap on some metallic highlights to all of the metal tools. I didn't really go with mud here. I didn't think that it was really necessary. I'm going for a pretty dry summer look. You could add a little bit of dusting with the airbrush if you wanted, but I had to get these things on the table pretty quick, and I ended up with something like this. I'm actually pretty happy with these. I like the pin wash on them, and I like the chipping. I do plan to be panning up a bunch of more German vehicles like this. And yeah, thank you for watching. I will see you next time.